On August 5th, 2010, something happened deep beneath the Chilean desert that would captivate over 1 billion people worldwide. For 69 days, the world held its breath as 33 men fought for survival in what seemed like an impossible situation. This is the true story of the San Jose mine disaster, a tale of human resilience, engineering miracles, and hope against all odds. What began as an ordinary workday in the Atacama Desert would become one of the most dramatic rescue operations in human history, broadcast live to every corner of the globe. This is the story of the 33. Imagine a 45-story building. Now picture that building falling directly toward you, blocking the only pathway between you and the outside world. But here's what makes it truly terrifying. You're over 700 meters beneath the surface of the Earth, trapped in darkness with no way out. This wasn't a nightmare or a scene from a disaster movie. This was the horrifying reality that 33 miners faced on that fateful August day at the San Jose mine in Chile, located 800 kilometers north of the capital, Santiago. When the ground began to shake and the deafening roar of collapsing rock filled the tunnels, everyone on the surface feared the worst. They believed all the workers were dead, buried beneath hundreds of thousands of tons of granite in an instant. But miraculously, all 33 miners had survived the initial collapse, and against every imaginable odd, they would all eventually return to the surface alive after an incredible 69 days trapped in the depths. The drama that unfolded around these men, who became known simply as the 33, would be followed with anxious anticipation by the entire world, with the breathtaking scenes of their rescue broadcast live on television to over 1 billion viewers across the planet. It was lunchtime on that Thursday, August 5th, and everything seemed perfectly normal at the San Jose mine in Copiapó, located in Chile's Atacama Desert region. The mine employed 150 workers and was operating as usual, with teams extracting copper and gold from deep within the mountain. With over a century of operation behind it, the San Jose had only one exploration tunnel that served as both the entrance and exit, with no alternative routes connecting the underground workings to the surface. This single tunnel descended into the mountain in a zigzag ramp pattern, covering approximately 7 kilometers from top to bottom. At exactly 2 in the afternoon, disaster struck. An internal collapse caused an enormous rock mass to break free from the mountain and crash down onto the tunnel, completely sealing off the connection to the surface. Trapped inside the mine were 33 miners, 32 Chileans, and 1 Bolivian. Their ordeal had just begun, though none of them yet understood the full magnitude of what had happened above their heads. Reconnaissance teams immediately rushed into the mine, advancing as far as they could until they reached the point of the collapse. There, for the first time, they saw the true scale of the problem they were facing. A gigantic mass of granite, approximately 130 meters tall and weighing more than 500,000 tons, had completely sealed the San Jose mine's exploration tunnel. The presence of this massive obstacle meant that it would be absolutely impossible for the miners to escape or be extracted through the route they had used to enter. An alternative path would need to be created, though nobody yet knew if such a thing was even possible. The technical teams also quickly surmised that if the miners were still alive, they would likely have made their way to the mine's only internal refuge, an area carved into the side of the tunnel measuring about 50 square meters, roughly the size of a small apartment. However, this refuge was located almost at the very end of the tunnel system, at a depth of 720 meters below the surface. News of the accident spread rapidly, and family members of the trapped workers rushed to the mine entrance, desperately seeking any information about their loved ones. There was no time to waste. Initially, the rescue teams attempted to use what was already available, the existing ventilation shafts. They theorized that these tubes could potentially be used to extract the group, and work immediately began inside the accessible portions of the mine to explore these cavities as a possible escape route. However, this idea had to be abandoned almost as quickly as it had been proposed. Just 2 days after the initial accident, another rockfall struck the ventilation tube that was supposed to serve as an alternative exit. It was completely destroyed, and the passage was blocked entirely. The Minister of Mining at the time, Lawrence Galborn, who was closely monitoring the rescue efforts, summarized the devastating situation in stark terms. The easiest and most logical route is now blocked. Specialists will have to find other alternatives, but these will be more difficult and will take much more time. At this point, nobody even knew if the miners were still alive down there in the darkness. The days that followed were filled with anguish, especially for the relatives of the buried workers who set up a camp directly in front of the mine entrance. They feared that the group might die if they weren't found soon, and this fear haunted them day and night. Everyone understood that if the miners had survived and managed to reach the underground shelter, they only had enough food stored there to last a few days at most. Time was running out with every passing hour, and the psychological pressure on the rescue teams was immense. 9 drilling probes, normally used for searching for mineral deposits, were installed on the surface. This time, however, they would be used to search for 33 people instead of precious metals. Each massive machine drilled a hole into the ground 15 centimeters in diameter and advanced carefully downward into the earth in an attempt to locate survivors. Many times the drills had to make detours around impenetrable rock formations, adjusting their paths as they went deeper. With cameras mounted at their extremities, the probes sent back images that were carefully evaluated by technicians on the surface. The mine's refuge, located at one of the deepest points in the entire tunnel system, would be the last area to be reached by the probes in their methodical search pattern. Meanwhile, more and more relatives and friends concentrated at the camp set up in front of the mine, bringing with them posters, messages of support, and prayers, while the international press gathered to inform the world about the unfolding Chilean drama. 2 full weeks passed with no confirmation about the state or location of the miners. The waiting was excruciating, and hope was beginning to fade for many of the family members who maintained their vigil at what had become known as Camp Hope. But then, 17 days after the accident, on August 22nd, came the first sign of life from the depths of the mine. One of the drilling probes finally broke through into a tunnel near the refuge area. The probe operators heard what they believed to be sounds coming from that location, possibly some attempt at communication from below. When they pulled the probe back up to the surface, it brought with it the surprise that would change the entire course of the San Jose tragedy. A small note had been attached by the miners to the side of the probe, a message that would go down in history and be remembered forever. Estamos bien en el refugio, los 33. We are well in the shelter, the 33. It was the information that relatives, colleagues, authorities, and the entire world had been desperately waiting to hear. Present at the scene, Chile's President Sebastián Pinera euphorically displayed the message with his hand raised high, and in front of reporters and television cameras from around the globe, he repeated its contents over and over, his voice breaking with emotion. Quoted by the Reuters news agency, Elisa Barros, sister of one of the miners trapped in the mine, said that the note sent by them completely changed everyone's expectations and outlook on the situation. The wait is very different now. It's a wait free from anguish. It's not over yet, but we have much more hope for a happy ending. The CBS network, which like all American media was also following the Chilean drama closely, recorded the relief of relatives who were monitoring the operations at the site. I am happy, said one of Mario Gomez's daughters, according to CBS. For the first time, I'm going to be able to sleep peacefully. The celebration at Camp Hope was overwhelming, with tears of joy, embraces, and prayers of thanksgiving filling the desert air around the mine entrance. Surviving for a full 17 days at 720 meters below the Earth's surface was already an admirable feat in itself. The group had spent the entire time rationing the supplies that were stored in the refuge. Each man had survived on only 2 spoonfuls of tuna, a little milk, and half a cookie every 48 hours. It was estimated that each miner had lost approximately 8 or 9 kilograms of body weight during this period of extreme deprivation. However, that phase was now behind them. With the successful drilling completed by the probe, the teams working on the surface now had a 15-centimeter tunnel as a communication channel with the buried miners. Through this narrow lifeline, glucose, medications, oxygen, and rehydration capsules were immediately sent down. A telephone cable was installed for direct communication, and a small celebration marked the first call, which was answered by the Minister of Mines, Lawrence Galborn. On the other end of the line was the shift supervisor, Luis Urzua, his voice steady and calm despite everything they had endured. We are well, waiting for rescue. A video camera was also sent down to the group, and the images received showed the miners shirtless, as they were constantly facing temperatures exceeding 30 degrees Celsius combined with extremely high humidity levels that made the refuge feel like a sauna. Family members began sending them messages of support and encouragement through the narrow communication tunnel. In total, 3 small tunnels for sending supplies and for communication would be drilled to maintain contact with the trapped men. For the engineers and authorities, however, the main objective remained clear. They needed to drill a passage wide enough to bring the miners back to the surface, using equipment that would guarantee both the effectiveness and safety of this unprecedented undertaking. The real challenge was only just beginning, and the entire world was watching to see if it could be done. 3 separate drilling operations were undertaken to attempt to create the rescue tunnel, designated as Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C, each representing different approaches and technologies. The first utilized the Strata 950 drill to open a completely new path and reach a depth of 702 meters. However, this option proved slow, indicating completion only at the end of December, which was deemed unacceptably late. Other faster options soon emerged to compete for priority. At the end of August, Plan B appeared, which envisioned a different technology and would take advantage of one of the small channels already being used for sending supplies to the trapped men. The SRAM T-130 drill would excavate around the narrow existing tunnel, making it wide enough to transport a miner inside a capsule. This would reduce the completion timeframe by 2 full months, from December to October, potentially saving lives if any medical emergency occurred below. The SRAM T-130, however, faced significant problems, breaking down twice during the operation and causing anxious delays. With an initial excavation that remained too narrow for human passage, it reached its destination at a point 624 meters deep. A second excavation phase, however, was necessary to widen the tunnel sufficiently to allow the extraction of the workers in the rescue capsule. Plan C seemed like an even faster alternative. The utilization of an oil exploration drilling rig, the RIG-421, a massive piece of equipment that represented the cutting edge of drilling technology. With its enormous structure, the rig had to be transported to the mine site by multiple trucks in separate parts to be assembled on location, a process that took several precious days of careful work. Its target was a point closer to the surface than the other plans, at a depth of 567 meters, which theoretically meant less drilling time. In addition to being fast, the RIG-421 needed only 1 excavation to create the tunnel, already at the width necessary for extracting the miners, which would save considerable time compared to the 2-phase approach of Plan B. Meanwhile, engineers from the Chilean Navy were designing the capsule that would bring the workers back to the surface, a task that also received crucial assistance from NASA's engineering teams. Named Fénix, after the mythical phoenix that rises from ashes, it would transport each miner individually and needed to include devices that would guarantee the success of the operation and the safety of whoever was inside during the perilous journey to the surface. NASA made a total of 75 recommendations based on their experience with spacecraft design, including the inclusion of a trapdoor in the floor of the capsule and small wheels on its sides. The wheels would cushion the journey to the surface, reducing friction with the tunnel walls and reducing the possibility of the capsule getting stuck midway, NASA's report explains. If the capsule still stopped rising despite these precautions, the trapdoor would allow the miner to exit through the bottom and descend with a rope back to the shelter to await another rescue attempt. The final result was a steel capsule measuring 3.9 meters in height on the outside, 1.90 meters on the inside, 54 centimeters in diameter, and weighing 420 kilograms of reinforced metal. On September 25, 2010, 51 days after the accident that had trapped them, the first Fénix capsule arrived at the San José mine. Painted in blue, red, and white, the colors of the Chilean flag, a symbol of national pride and determination. When it was presented to the press gathered at the site, relatives of the trapped miners were allowed to inspect the equipment up close and even touch it. Carolina Lobos, daughter of one of the miners trapped in the mine, entered the capsule herself and approved what she saw, giving her blessing to the device that would hopefully save her father's life. 3 units of the Fénix were produced for the rescue operation. as having an identical copy on the surface would make it easier to understand and troubleshoot any technical problems that might occur during the actual rescue attempts. Of the 3 excavation plans, only one achieved its objective and reached the depth necessary for rescue. Plan A was abandoned in early October, having reached 598 meters, 104 meters short of what was needed to reach the refuge where the men waited. Despite great expectations and the massive size of the equipment involved, the enormous oil drilling rig of Plan C proved incapable of overcoming the difficulties presented by the type of subsoil at the location and managed to excavate only 373 meters before encountering insurmountable geological obstacles. Plan B, however, was ultimately successful, becoming the hero of the rescue effort. Despite 2 episodes in which parts of the equipment broke down and required emergency repairs, the SRAM T-130 drill, manufactured by a company in Pennsylvania in the United States, managed to widen the tunnel to the 624 meters necessary to reach the miners' location. On October 9th, shortly after 8 in the morning local time, the drill reached its objective, a moment celebrated with tremendous emotion by the technicians on the surface who had worked tirelessly for weeks to make this moment possible. With the tunnel ready and one of the 3 capsules, Fénix 2, prepared for transporting the miners to safety, the greatest challenges had been overcome, though significant risks still remained. Bringing them to the surface, however, was still a delicate task requiring extreme precision and care. Every precaution was taken to ensure success. The capsule was equipped with light, a communication device, and 3 air tanks offering 90 minutes of emergency breathing capability in case the capsule became stuck. Each miner would ascend wearing dark glasses to avoid the shock to their eyes from the bright exterior light after 69 days in darkness. On average, the journey in the capsule would take approximately 15 minutes from the depths to the surface. On the night of Tuesday, October 12th, after a successful test with an empty capsule the previous day, everything was finally ready for the actual rescue to begin. Shortly after 11 at night, a member of the rescue team, Manuel Gonzalez, entered Fénix 2 to be sent down to where the miners waited anxiously. On the return to the surface, the capsule began bringing up Florencio Avalos, who had been chosen as the first to be rescued due to his relatively good health and psychological stability. At 12:10 on the morning of the 13th, before the anxious eyes of everyone present and the expectation of the entire world watching on television, Fénix 2 reappeared at the surface, emerging from the earth like a mechanical phoenix. From inside it, in front of television cameras that were broadcasting the scene live to every corner of the world, Avalos emerged, blinking in the lights. The miner immediately embraced his 7-year-old son Baron, who couldn't contain his tears of joy and relief. An embrace with his wife, with colleagues, and with President Sebastián Pinera completed the deeply touching moment that brought tears to viewers worldwide. The operation would continue for 23 consecutive hours of intense work and emotion. When the second miner emerged from Fénix 2, the captivating Mario Sepulveda, known affectionately as Super Mario, the emotional climate of Avalos' arrival transformed into an outright celebration and party. Sepulveda was received by his wife and distributed to those present rocks that he had brought as souvenirs from the depths where they had been trapped. He embraced colleagues, the minister, the president, and the First Lady, Cecilia Morel, with infectious enthusiasm and energy. He fell into the arms of other colleagues who were watching the scene from farther away and led the traditional Chilean chant, Chi, 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 Lu, Mineros de Chile. His joy and vitality were contagious, lifting the spirits of everyone present. Almost a full day later, at 9:55 in the evening on the 13th, the last of the 33 reached the surface. Luis Urzua, the shift supervisor who had kept his men organized and hopeful throughout their ordeal. Manuel Gonzalez, the first of 6 members of the rescue teams who had helped the workers during their return journey, remained in the underground world. He was raised shortly afterward, the last person to leave the depths of the San Jose mine, closing the chapter on one of history's most dramatic rescue operations. Thanks for watching. If you want to see another video talking about celebrations and questions about this tragedy, give your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video to help the channel. Bye-bye.